Welcome to Rich Conversations. This is gonna be such a fun episode. As you can see, our environment is quite different than what you're probably used to seeing. We are at the Frost Museum of Science, and we're in Miami. This is pretty awesome. We have Shelby Thomas here, who's a marine biologist. This is her second appearance on the show. She was on episode 182 before, and we talked about all things ocean and conservation and coral reefs, and it's cool to connect with you in person and be here. I love it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day out, so
yeah, it's
can't complain.
It's early morning, or it's starting to be late morning, and the sun in Miami, it gets hot really quick.
Love the heat, so it doesn't bother me.
You're used to it. For me, I'm like starting to sweat already, and
Adjusted.
Yeah, the sun is hot, but we're here, and this is so cool. Well, why don't you reintroduce yourself for listeners and viewers?
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. My name's Shelby Thomas. I'm a marine biologist. I kind of talked to you last time on the show about my nonprofit organization, Ocean Rescue Alliance. I'm the founder and CEO. We're a marine conservation and restoration nonprofit. Primarily here in South Florida, we focus on using artificial structure for different biological purposes, building artificial reefs that create fish habitat, but also provide opportunities to outplant different species like corals, oysters, and mangroves. So really facilitating creating a restoring ecosystem. But one unique thing that we do is implement art to really connect the public back to the ocean, creating a dive destination that can really connect community and culture. And these holistic sites can really help not only the marine environment, but really integrate the shift in perspective of the community and their relationship with the ocean. So we're really excited to be expanding more projects throughout Florida, but also internationally now. So I'm excited to share some of that with you here in a bit.
That's exciting. You're a pretty busy person, and this last weekend you were at a number of different events with the Ocean Rescue Alliance. Can you share kind of what those events were and what you guys were doing there?
Yeah, so it was just Earth Day, which is one of my favorite days. I think every day is Earth Day, though, right? So
it should be, right?
It should be.
Like every day should be Valentine's Day, and you know,
yeah,
Thanksgiving, thankfulness.
But you know, in particular for Earth, I mean, we have so much to appreciate and be thankful for from nature, and we really rely on it, right? It's the of our whole existence. We need to really be thankful for our oceans and our Earth. But all of the events we had really tailored around celebrating the ocean on Earth Day still, and you know, often people can sometimes be disconnected because it's a blanket of water. So we were spreading a lot of awareness, had a few different outreach events, one with Baker's Cay in Key Largo, Florida, where we've done some coral restoration effort in the past. And that hotel specifically, we got to engage with some of the guests and bring awareness of those resources that are right off the shore. The really fun thing about some of those events, a lot of international people were there. So from the UK, and
really?
That never really got to see coral reefs. So that was really exciting to engage with the different guests that hadn't really been exposed to some of these resources.
So what is the history of Earth Day? And you probably know a lot more about it than I do, but how did that come about, and what does it mean to you in a way?
Yeah, so I'm not as keen with how each day was established. I think there's almost every day is something.
Now I think you can just apply online. You got it.
You can create a day, but what Earth Day means to me is really just celebrating the connection with nature itself and having that appreciation for it. I mean, I think we depend so much on nature, and that interconnectedness is really important to not only celebrate but realize every day. Sometimes as we're growing as communities, we can sometimes get a little disconnected, and I think having days like this gives us a moment of time to just pause and reconnect. And so that's kind of what it means to me, is being able to connect back to nature, but also from an organizational standpoint express that importance.
So with you do certain things with the organization for Earth Day. Do you personally, on an individual level, do anything every year to celebrate Earth Day?
So we do most outreach events with my organization for Ocean Day and Earth Day. Ocean Day is coming up in June, so we're excited to celebrate that. The ocean has its own day. But personally, I always try to take time more than once a year to reconnect to nature. I do yoga and meditation a lot, and I think a lot of things in the environment and within restoration itself can be very meditative, diving and kind of bringing that focal point to our resources and restoration.
Yeah. And my dad he'll plant trees on Earth Day every year.
Yeah.
He had this one, so in our backyard, this was like 20, 25 years ago, he planted these oak trees apart, and then he said that he's planting them there, so then when he retires, they should be strong enough where you could tie like a hammock in between.
Oh, yeah.
So we bought them for Father's Day a year or two ago. We got him a hammock because now they're like fully there and he's retired. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, I love that. I think, you know, I would love to start a tradition where we could actually do some planting. You know, we, of course, with my organization be mostly ocean conservation work. I think normally Earth Day is centered around nature, as in terrestrial plants, and not as much ocean environment, but of course our Earth is mostly water. So I think we've always highlighted that aspect of how we're so fundamentally relying on the ocean itself for our weather, and oxygen provides more oxygen than our trees do. So a lot of people don't realize how valuable and critical to life the ocean is. So I love bringing that tie back for Earth Day, but I would love to do some, you know, planting
the trees
gardens.
Kind of steal the thunder a little bit. Because you can see them grow, they're physical.
Yeah.
The ocean just changes all the time.
In your face, you know? Kind of,
yeah.
You're around it more often, and not everybody's as immersed into the ocean, but it's extremely important still. So I still would like to get a little more connected with Earth and planting. I have less of a green thumb than I'd like to admit. Maybe it's because I'm really busy, and watering plants is sometimes hard, but
it's very
but
hard.
I take care of my corals in the ocean, so and
do.
My tank's at home, so it's good.
I have a question for later.
Yeah.
About your fish, but before we get to that, the last time we talked, it was December. What and it's April now. In that time, is there anything in particular that stands out to you as like significant milestones in what you're doing and like things that you're proud of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been making a lot of progress lately, and especially really excited that now things are a little bit loosening up with COVID. I know that's impacted a lot of communities in different ways, but we've been able to get a lot more community engagement now from that. And we've been doing a lot of different dive operations and outplanting corals and doing monitoring projects on our reefs, specifically in West Palm Beach, Florida. Off of Riviera Beach, we have our 1,000 Mermaids project site, and we've been conducting research there on different structures and recruiting different fisheries species to them, which ones perform the best. So we've gotten a lot of really phenomenal research done. We're doing actually a coral thermal tolerance study, and what that means is most corals, actually, if you didn't know, that our Florida coral reef is the 3rd largest reef in the world.
You mentioned that last episode.
And a lot of people don't know that. And our reef track stretches from the Keys all the way up to Palm Beach County. So that's quite northward, and we don't have as many of those stony corals that are actually endangered, you know, more in South Florida and the northern reef track. But we're looking into the feasibility of, can they grow there? Can we be translocating reefs to also help preserve the species and expand the diversity and range of these corals, which historically were there? Yeah. So we're doing an awesome study with the University of Miami. We also work here with Frost a lot as well. But this project, we're actually looking at if these corals will survive these a little bit colder temperatures in Palm Beach County. And that's going to lead to so much research down the road that can give us a more expansion of coral nurseries and doing species restoration. So that's one of them. The other really exciting news, we're getting ready to deploy another reef with the city of Hollywood. And that's actually one of the first cities that's actually really fully backing one of these projects. They're helping fund the construction very creatively through art in public places. So it's a way that doesn't impact tax dollars. It's really generated from different business development. So it's a unique way to fund some of the work. And we'll have some different land art that will bring awareness. That reef, we're looking at potentially end of June, beginning of July to deploy it.
Wow. So you're a busy person. You're doing so much. I think the question I'm wondering, and all of us listening and watching, is like, how do you stay balanced and energized? So, you know, like, like yesterday you were in Fort Lauderdale, and then today you're in Miami, and then after this recording you're going to the University of Miami, and we're here at the Frost Museum. Like, how do you balance all the things that you're doing and also still have the energy to drive that motivation of your mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot. And I think a lot of that relies because I am truly passionate and love what I do.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a job to me. I think, I've given a lot of thought to passion and purpose, and I feel that it's really my purpose to not only bring awareness to some of these resources, but figure out ways to scale restoration more sustainably versus relying on grants. So I think just having that passion and love really gives me the energy to move forward. It can be tough sometimes. Like yesterday was a little tough, being at the Fort Lauderdale event all day, but also meeting so many people that, having that direct impact, even kids. Yesterday we had some little girls come up and they were trying to match the coral species, and just a little light in their eye when they found out, oh, these reefs are right off the water and they're not divers yet. They're like, we can't wait to dive. We want to learn to dive. And getting to learn about it, and this is right in their backyard. So providing that opportunity to connect other people to this love really motivates me as well, because I think sometimes that can be kind of lost. We'll have multi-million-dollar properties on the beach line, but people don't really realize or connect what's right off of that property or hotel. So I'd say my love for this work really helps inspire and motivate me.
It's cool to see kids interested in science, isn't it? Like, I was, we're at the Frost Museum, and I was here last week, a few days ago, and just watching kids interact with the displays and the exhibits, it's really cool. And it's also interesting too to see the parents. They're like, all right, come on. Those are the parents at your event are probably like, okay, the coral's great, yeah, that's awesome. But like, the kids are so full of imagination and wonder. It's cool to see that, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I love it. I think the awesome thing about kids is they're so genuinely curious, and they're I've watched things, sometimes as kids, they're like little scientists. They're testing out things, and everybody has different parenting styles, but sometimes that's kind of brought out, and it kind of leaves as you go to adulthood, and we're getting faced with these realities. But I think it's so important to keep some of that curious nature of kind of experimenting with things. And that's one thing, especially with my organization, as a scientist, why I fell in love with art was its ability to bring awareness and connect people. We sometimes get very lost and diverted on our tracks. And so with my organization within the Alliance, the goal is really to connect different disciplines to really accelerate innovation. And we're doing a lot of that in South Florida, working with museums to also really show and demonstrate education and outreach, but further academia to do research. And the more and more that we collaborate, I think the more we can do.
So you mentioned like creating opportunities yourself, not having to rely on like grants and things like that. Can you elaborate on that a little more, in like different ways that you go about like generating like revenue to do these types of things?
Yeah. So traditionally, a lot of the research work I've done in the past is based off of grants. And unfortunately, there's not that much funding for all the things that we should be doing. So developing sustainable business models is very important. I think in any type of restoration field, whether that's terrestrial, preserving any species, making it into a feasible economic model that will support that work without relying on grants. And it also creates a non-competitive space. So how I've been really integrating that into Ocean Rescue Alliance is utilizing art provides ecotourism opportunity that actually can provide an ROI for hotels, cities, and counties, because now they have a dive destination that will generate bringing people to the site, bringing awareness, but that actually then helps fund doing the restoration work that we're doing at the sites as well. Developing programs that integrate the community, where instead of, let's say, fishing, we can bring guests to outplant corals, or bring the community to outplant and restore that. And that creates this then story that they might want to come see the coral in 2 or 3 years. And it creates this beautiful relationship, kids testing their voice.
So we got these loud if you can hear it. So there's some kids testing. There's this display or this interactive exhibit where you can talk into something and then like feet away that other people can hear it. So it's kids shouting into something right now. Experiments full of curiosity.
That's good. But yeah, so on that funding bridge, we really use art, developing programs that can integrate community, but also we're now also doing celebratory and memorial reefs, plaques, and that's another way to connect, but also fun doing restoration versus traditional methods. Another unique one that we've been getting into a little bit more recently is on the tech community side, where we're doing different NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that are ocean conservation art pieces that actually directly connect to funding restoration work. So every single NFT comes with something that's very tangible that's done with it, whether that's creating a reef or outplanting coral, or even where people can come dive with us and come on one of the dives to experience it themselves. So those are some of the avenues, but I think we'll have so much opportunity to expand.
Yeah, talk more about the NFTs. This is something new for a lot of people and exciting for a lot of people that get more and more into it and educated about it. What's your experience been like working in the tech field and how it can help our communities in the future?
So I think it's incredible, right? We're seeing this big boom in cryptocurrency and NFTs, and it's whether people don't understand it or not, you're hearing about it, right? I think we're definitely moving to this kind of digital realm, advancing technology at rapid rates, which is incredible, but we can use that technology for a lot of good. And so there's a lot of funding that's getting raised, now turning to NFTs, where we can actually do purposeful projects. And so we like to say we do art for impact. So everything that we do regarding art and NFTs has some kind of impact and restoration value. And so what we do is these ocean conservation pieces with different artists that can really link to a specific project, and that also helps back it and support it in the future. So it's regenerative. And I think the future of this also turns into, I don't know if you've heard of ESG, impact, environmental, social governance, is becoming a big part of investment strategies, where they're creating this accountability for businesses, which is great, to support some type of sector of that. Okay. Of course, we're environmental, but we also have this social component where we're connecting communities, and we're figuring out how to really tie that in the organization now. But we have so many ESG impact abilities with our artificial reefs too. Aside that we might not have talked about before, but coastal resilience and erosion, of course, sea level rise is affecting everywhere, all over the world, every coastline. We have structures that we've been developing and also working with the University of Miami on. They have amazing engineers that are developing breakwater structures that help reduce wave energy. And like what natural reefs do, they help dissipate that energy from eroding the shore. If you're not familiar with it, pretty much every coastline all the way up to New York does beach renourishment. And what that is, it may sound a little harmless, but they dredge sand offshore and dump it onshore, and just to maintain the beach line. But it's honestly a Band-Aid. It's not the most long-term sustainable solution. It's affected a lot of our beaches in Florida and reefs because that sediment goes right back out and smothers some of the reef systems. It actually directly hinders restoration progress in certain areas because there's federal regulations on you can't be working with endangered species if you're conducting beach renourishment because they know they'll get smothered. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword where we're not really progressing with restoration because we're still trying to maintain the beach for tourism. So one thing we're trying to shift as an organization that'll be scalable up the coastline, but also for developing countries that really need this, is to design reefs that help protect against coastal erosion, provide fish habitat, and enable restoration. And that itself is so scalable, and I think that we'll eventually be able to get federal and state funding to do these structures because there are investing into coastal infrastructure will provide a more sustainable long-term solution and all these other added benefits.
So the last time we talked, my understanding of some of the things you're doing with the coral reefs is you're using what you called gray materials, which are like you're like green materials, but also like
concrete
and like
substrates.
things like that.
Yeah.
Where you can create these materials and structures then that can create like rebirth the coral system, right? And I guess two things I'm trying to say. So what you're saying with the wave impact is build something more off the coast so that it diminishes the impact coming in on these waves that they have on, say, the beaches and the environment here. Do you see that as far as climate change goes, do you see that as like a huge aspect of it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an incredibly useful tool. I think the artificial structure space, artificial reef space we're really wanting to help evolve that. Historically, artificial reef programs have been honestly trash of land. Construction pilings, debris, ships, boulders, culverts. That looks and acts nothing like a natural reef system. So one unique thing about Ocean Rescue Alliance is we design reefs to mimic natural reef geology and structure, because fundamentally, and I think I talked about this with you before, we're typically reactive to things in life as humans.
Yeah.
And we need to be proactive and preventative. We can't wait for our reefs to die to wonder where our fish are going to go. And we're losing that critical microhabitat that supports fisheries. Over 25% of all the fish that we eat has some point of their life on the reef.
Yeah.
And it supports so many other aspects of livelihoods and ecosystem services. So we can't risk waiting for those species to collapse to then lose more species. So we're trying to be really proactive in designing reefs with intention, which also includes the coastal resilience component. If we can invest into doing these reefs offshore, and this is actually a nearshore environment, so we're talking about 15 to 30 feet, where we're maximizing, reducing that energy. That's a more long-term solution rather than dumping sand that goes back out. But it has so many more benefits, because now we're creating long-term habitat for fish. Now we're creating a site that we can outplant corals, oysters, or mangroves, and that brings in further life. Implementing the art on top of that as a separate component, not necessarily the same structure because they're different designs for specific purposes, but then the art connects the community, creates a destination to dive, and gives a unique perspective. I think the exciting avenue of art is we can be very in-depth to connect to culture. So I mentioned, I think before, that we're doing the Mayan reef fundraising for that in Mexico to do a serpent deity. And that's just a beautiful project, I think, to connect further to Mayan culture and bring awareness and honor the community of what their wants and needs are for that site, but also creating a important restoration site that also creates a new job for the community to restore that resource for its longevity. And I think we can do that all throughout Florida. We have our Thousand Mermaids project, but we haven't gotten a chance to do something that's culturally relevant yet.
Okay.
And it's great, like a lot of the cities are interested in the mermaids, but I think we can be so in-depth and intentional with the art as well. Opening it up to the community. What would the community like to see? We should do some call to artist. We're also working with another artificial reef project called Reefline, which coming here, I'm their scientific director, and working with them to do different scientific modifications and continue doing research at the site as well. But they're more of a fine art artificial reef that's going to be about 8 miles off of South Beach. So that's really exciting, and we'll have to talk on that more later too. But there's just this immense opportunity to create and help restore environments, and so I'm really excited, and that's why I really love that art avenue, because it gives us such a unique perspective to connect with people on different levels. What might be interesting to you or meaningful and have a statement on your life might be a little different versus mine if you went to dive sites. So I know that was kind of a long-ended wraparound, but so doing these holistic sites with these structures having different purposes, I think will further give us this opportunity in all the issues with climate change to be adaptive and intentional.
And the key component of all of this is that you're finding ways to do these things without having to rely on limited resources that traditionally have been the avenue that you would tackle something like this. You're taking a more proactive, innovative approach. working in the oceans and the interconnectedness of the world and the earth with the oceans, is that something you like parlayed into a lot of these ideas of working with other disciplines and just like people in different fields and this non-competitive kind of attitude?
So what got me to really look at developing sustainable models is just really the frustrations as a scientist. I did oyster restoration for my master's in Apalachicola Bay, which has a whole different suite of, environmental stressors on the oyster populations there. A lot of it related to water quality and salinity and different diseases, but every environment has different stressors. But specifically, for a lot of the projects I've been involved with as a scientist, sometimes it can come from mitigation funds to fund projects where, in my mind, sometimes that's more of a check in the box for companies, not necessarily are we following through the longevity of this project for a long term. They're more so just kind of doing it, okay, we did the restoration, that's that.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot. That's not to say all projects, but it's frustrating if you're here with the intention to help restore the environment, and yes, we're getting some of it funded, but it's knowing some of it's not as sustainable makes you question, what's the worth of that?
Yeah. Like you said before, like Band-Aids.
Yeah, it's a
Checking the
quick fix.
Yeah.
And so another point of contention is also there's a lot of restoration groups, right? You think that there's hundreds of groups doing restoration in the Florida Keys on our third largest reef. There's about 10, There's not that many doing active restoration. And one of the reasons being it's also very competitive for funding. Then it creates this kind of cutthroat environment where you're hindering collaboration because each prospective group has to have some kind of differentiation from each other to be more competitive for that funding. And a lot of them don't have the most sustainable models. So we work with Coral Restoration Foundation, MOAT, as well as the Keys Marine Sanctuary, Keys Marine Lab in the Keys. And everyone has a little bit of different restoration methods, but it's kind of sad to see where certain spaces can directly hinder actually sharing critical information.
Yeah.
They've been really great about it now, and there's actually a new Florida enactment it's a genetic salvage project, where they're preserving species that might be impacted from disease, because now all these institutions, including Frost and a lot of other ones, are actually housing these corals for the future for spawning and reproduction. So that's become this beautiful kind of state-mandated, we're all going to work together and preserve this, but that's not always the case. And so I see that a lot in not just coral restoration, but other groups where we have this, we're all collaborative, but they're not actually sharing critical information that could help us all grow and get this work done. So I, with intention in Ocean Rescue Alliance, was how can we come into this space and not be competitive, but help accelerate and help lift each other up and get more corals out. And so that's where, we don't have our own coral nurseries, but we have plenty of coral nurseries that actually have so much coral, they're having a hard time getting it out. So how can we kind of more industrialized scale outplanting corals at a more rapid rate? And that's where we're working with a lot of different scientists and creating innovation in the artificial structure space, because now we're providing ways to outplant them quicker. And supporting that supporting coral restoration still, but being able to more collaborate. So how can we fill these gaps within restoration? And we're definitely, working on that in the ocean space, but it's needed everywhere. I mean, it's not just the marine sector. I think there's so much that we can do to collaborate.
It's like an interesting point too. It's like, while you're talking about collaboration with coral reefs and within this environment, that can still be applicable to like any other field, you know what I mean? Like, and personally, like I see with the 21st century and all these capabilities using technology and our connectedness, like we should be able to do a lot of cool stuff. And I think that's kind of the first step, is kind of that mindset of like, until now we've been kind of working under like a model in our minds of like individuality and competitiveness, when like the more we work together, the more problems we can solve.
Exactly.
And it just makes more sense.
100%. I think, part of that's also within like the egos of people, right? We get this complex of people that are experts in their field and amazing, right? But where then they'll shut down, ideas from someone that's completely from another discipline. Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I love getting people together that have nothing to do with the ocean, and I think so many unique ideas can be spurred from putting people from each perspective discipline in the same room and solving those issues. I'm honestly a firm believer of we can solve the majority of all the problems that we have today with more effective collaboration and intention with putting people together that can do the job. We have to let go of some of this ego and actually work together. And so I think it could be, beautiful, and I think we're doing a good example of that in the ocean space. But it's still, there's lots of fundamentals. There's politics and so many things that can have a lot of branches out. But it's progress. It's progress. It takes time, and it takes conversation. So
rich conversations.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's a great note to transition into, on like a more personal level. What adventures you have coming up? I'm really curious. You're an adventurous person. Like, where are you headed next? What are you excited about?
Oh yeah, excited about a lot. Definitely we have a lot of events coming up here in South Florida, so I'll be around here in particular for the reef deployment. We're doing some different coral restoration projects. We're also getting to do some oyster restoration and mangrove pilots potentially on the west coast of Florida. So really excited to expand out a little more. Including, did I ever tell you about the Champa Bay reef idea?
You did, yeah.
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 So we're hoping to get some more progression on that too. So I'm really excited. But in terms of other adventures, I'm going to be going to Germany in July for the International Coral Reef Symposium.
Really?
So I'm extremely excited about that because traditionally it's held every 4 years.
Okay.
And it's all the top scientists in the coral restoration space and policymakers. So we get to all come to the same focal point and discuss these pressing issues. So I'm excited to share some more of our innovation and hopefully connect to do this more at an international level. We have a few projects going in Australia just on natural reefs, but I would like to implement these projects elsewhere that are more solely needed. We're doing a few throughout the Caribbean, but we haven't actually deployed any reefs yet, and I think that there's so much potential. So I'm really looking forward to that, and then I'm going to add some days to explore around there too, Germany, Austria, and go to Croatia as well. So I'm very excited for that because haven't been over there in a while.
That's really cool. I love too that you can use you can parlay what you're doing and then also travel and see the sites over there as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I think I would be blessed because I could go to a lot of beautiful locations through the work, but I think one of my favorite things about going to new places too is just really getting connected with the community and culture. I just love experience the actual localized culture. So that's been kind of a beautiful journey with working with some of our partners in Mexico, and I've gotten to dive some cenotes, which I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's similar to our Florida spring system.
Is, Okay.
But they have such a cultural relevance in Mexico to their life, and beautiful stories. So I just love getting into the deep history.
Are these the ones with the caves and stuff?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got to dive called Angelita, and it's a cenote at 120 feet. They have a gas sulfur layer, and it's kind of one of the most eerie dives that you've kind of go in, but it's like another world. And beneath that, it's complete darkness, but it goes another 300 feet.
Really?
You do a tech dive, and you can actually see Mayan remains. A lot of the cenotes were used for sacrifices or different rituals.
Really? So
it's very intense, and you get to experience culture in nature in an immersive environment, and I love it. So I like diving into things like that literally throughout the world, because we have in Australia, I was fortunate to go one time, would love to go back, but they have the Aboriginals that have so much culture and community too. So I'm excited to
check those
future
out.
Exploration. Yeah.
So when you're on that, do you have a camera that you take with you and take photos?
Yeah, I have a GoPro. I don't have a fancy rig, but I think from the imagery piece, it's funny. I was just talking about this the other day. Visuals and videos can have such an impact on communicating. The no straws movement stemmed from that sea turtle picture of the straw being in the sea turtle's nose. And so using visuals in a very intentional way is important. And we don't have as much. We have a few awesome videographers and photographers we work with that have actually like volunteered their time and really helped document some of the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to kind of evolving that more, and even through the travels, being able to show that can bring awareness to people that might not dive at all, might not get to experience that.
And then even what you were saying before, like if you're having art installations in the water, which brings ecotourism, and then all of a sudden people, if they're diving and looking at the art, they're going to bring a camera with them, and they're going to take photos of that, and then that will help bring awareness about what you're doing and just overall the issues.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the most beautiful thing about the underwater art too is like nature's the artist too. So every time you come back, it's different. And then maybe you seeing a specific coral that recruited and grew there might have a moment, right? That you're like, this is amazing. I mean, one of our mermaid statues was really awesome. Obviously, we didn't orchestrate this. We didn't outplant any coral on that site until actually this past December, just from permit-wise, because it's up north. But a lot of things have grown on it. We actually had one of the mermaids had a sponge encrusting bra and a little bit on the head, like a hairpiece. And it's just funny because nature decorated it like that, and it looks so beautiful. And we've had a lot of people take pictures of it because it's really vibrant red. And we, of course, didn't do that. Nature did. So I think it can impact people in so many different ways. And I'm looking forward to the new art initiatives that we can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there like 3 musical artists that have influenced your outlook on life?
On life, ooh, yeah. I really love music, so I typically will play it like all the time when I wake up. It's different genres depending on what I'm doing, but some that I've been into recently, I might have said this last time too, Rufus de Soul and Nora and Pure is kind of a mix. They'll bring in some very like nature sounds, but it's still not necessarily full house, still has words, but it's it's very I don't know, I definitely connect with it. Kind of has a lot of songs about life.
Some stuff last time,
I would say those definitely. I think
Rufus de Soul, is that it's African, right? It's like an African
No,
group,
it's like 3 guys. I don't know where they're from actually. I think they're from the UK. And they'll be in Florida in October, so I'm hoping to see them. But they did actually a festival in Mexico where we have a project on the beach. I'm like, that would be great. But I'd say those 2.
Yeah.
What about you?
Beatles for sure are number 1.
Yeah.
And not just like listening to the Beatles, but like studying them in a way. Mm-hmm. Like here, what I took away from the Beatles and listening to the Beatles, we would be driving back from church with my mom, and the like oldie station would be on, and there's like this Beatles brunch, and then so they have all these interviews and they're playing all of that, and so that was like more of my awareness of the group. But then you start listening to it, and I love the sound, and then also the lyrics, but mainly the story about them is like they just came from this like blue collar background in Liverpool, and they ended up being the greatest band of all time. And it's like no one's really gonna argue that they're not, because of so many different things. And it's like, it reminded me of my own background in like growing up on a farm in Wisconsin. It's like, well, if the Beatles could just have a background like that, why can't I do great things in my life? You know, so then just listening and learning and kind of like studying how they did things and like the innovation and pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
The Beatles for sure. The other 2, it's a little harder to distinguish. So if I don't have an answer at the top of my head, then it probably hasn't been as impactful. But what I find, like people our age, whenever you ask a question like what music do you listen to, everybody says, oh, I listen to all different genres.
Mm-hmm.
You find that too?
Somewhat. I think sometimes people will say that because sometimes I feel like now a lot of music's not necessarily similar, but some of it like morphs together. You know, I've heard like country and rap coming together. I've heard everybody's bringing in a little bit of jazz, or like the EDM. Some genres, I'm like, I don't even know how to explain this genre. But yeah, I would say that. I mean, I don't think everyone's as into some of the older genres. You know, I still really love and appreciate like Frank Sinatra. I love Frank Sinatra. And some of just the older, you know, also the lyrics of it, just some of like, it's insane to look at the time periods and the changes of, I think we sometimes, even through music, you know, lose the, you know, they talk about just these simple things in life, you know, and appreciating different things from perspectives. I mean, you know, Frank Sinatra's got like the World on a String song. And, you know, I just think there's such a beauty with, you know, some of the lyrics from some of the older music that sometimes isn't fully in some of the newer stuff. You know?
You don't say.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I think I connect a lot with the Rufus de Sol, because it also talks like kind of a lot about life and nature, and that resonates with me. So
now we've been talking about how we have these capabilities now with technology, and we're in the 21st century, collaboration. Do you ever think that we have access to like every song ever recorded on our phones? We can listen to it, like you said, you listen to it all day and everything. But this is a very recent thing that humans been able to experience. Whereas even if we go back before 1900, the world is silent. You know, in order to hear music, you have to go to the town hall where there's a celebration, maybe once a month, maybe once a year, a festival. And it was, what would that feeling be like, having experienced the world in silence, and then you're together, but you're only listening to a certain type of music because it's influenced by your geography and your culture that streams through. Yeah. And now it's like you can
experience anything.
You can listen to you can listen to literally anything, and it's just something that's interesting to me.
Yeah, right? I think it's kind of like the whole, and I don't know if it's necessarily called this, but like the beauty and disaster side of things and social media, right? You can share things instantly, but it also can be too obsessive, right? So there's a fine-tuned balance between everything. I think the awesome thing on the music side is that, you know, you could be listening to something that's, you know, African culture, and it has a different feeling, and you can really feel the culture through the music. And yeah, everybody has different kind of, I guess, calls for what's meaningful to them. You know, some maybe it's like a visual, or, you know, doing things, or touch, or sound, smell. I think music's a beautiful way to, like an art that can really influence culture and community. I mean, we've used art in all forms to get through all kinds of things throughout generations, these different periods. So everything evolves. So we're in a unique spot with everything. I think it's a blessing to be able to share it, but everything in moderation, right?
Including moderation.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just like a really interesting point in like the human story, and to me, it's exciting to see what we'll do, and also know that you can empower yourself to literally do whatever you aspire to help out in, or like give to the world. You have more tools now than you had before, and you can like go do it.
Yeah.
It's pretty empowering, isn't it?
It is empowering, and I think sometimes that's lost, right? I always think of it's easy to look at something and say it's difficult, but the hardest thing is that just first step. And taking the steps. You know, years ago, when I even started undergrad or my master's, I wouldn't have thought that I would have started my own organization in my PhD program, or, you know, being through my PhD almost through my PhD at the age that I am now. I think it's just setting, you know, intentions and following through, and I think there's so much empowerment with having so many resources, you know, in this generation that we're in now, to do a lot of impactful things. So it's easy to have sometimes this doom and gloom mindset considering a lot of our environmental stressors, but I think the beauty in it is we're more equipped now than ever to make rapid change, and very intentionally. I actually got a chance to meet Sylvia Earle, which I'm not sure if you know who she is.
Sylvia
Earle. She's one of the most world-known female oceanographers.
I think she's in a display over here.
Yes, she is. She was the first
at the
female.
museum the other day, and I saw a display on her. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So she's very well known. Incredible female scientist that's really paved the way for a lot of women in science. And I got to meet her recently in the last few months and have dinner with her the night after, which was amazing. And it's just so much you can ask and say. And when she spoke, she had this interesting viewpoint, because everybody's kind of like, oh, future kids, so sorry for them, and it's this kind of negative spin. And she had this very positive statement that actually we're in the best point that we could be in our life. I wish that I was born in this generation, because we have so much impact we can make with all the tools that we have.
Yeah.
So I think just that with everything. So.
Well, that's awesome. Let's end on that note, because it's such a beautiful way to frame it. And thanks for coming on. This has been so fun. It's getting much hotter now. The sun's coming out more.
You're baking in the sun over there.
My northern northern blood can't handle this much longer. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was wonderful to meet you in person, and welcome to sunshiny Florida.
Thank you. And thanks for watching and listening.